I was looking to send you a good Lit Hub Features essay, and I just passed one that called Ulysses: Good or Bad.
Welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and I'm here as always with Tom Roberge from Riff Raff.
Hello. I'm in our back room as we speak.
Oh, that's awesome.
Surrounded by galleys on my right and bottles of alcohol to my left.
And this week we're joined by special guest Alex Shepard from the New Republic, and we're going to be talking about, you say hi.
Oh, hi.
Cut you off.
Alex.
Alex, who's mostly just was trolling NBA Twitter right now. And refreshing it at a frantic pace. But we're going to be talking a lot about like book coverage and what it is, what it isn't, some different things that kind of relate into that. But before we get started, I just want to make one quick announcement, is that the new season of the 2-month review will be starting on February 15th with the first episode that goes up on that Thursday. The book that we're covering is Georgy Gospodinov's The Physics of Sorrow. As always, you can get it through any number of places. A lot of bookstores are carrying it. I know some that have even stocked up in advance of this particular podcast series. But also, if you do need to order it through our website, if you live in a place like Rochester, you can order it through Open Letter Books and use the code 2 month at checkout, and you'll get 20% off. But then what's exciting is that the first episode in which you cover part 1 of the book is going to be recorded live through YouTube with Tom as our special guest on Monday, February 19th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That's right? Yes. Monday, February 19th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. There will be a link on this. There'll be other posts about it. But basically, you just go to essentially my YouTube channel, and you can watch us all talk about it, and then that will be converted into the podcast. But as we talk about it, if you've read the first part, you can enter in questions, comments. You can respond to us. So when we say stupid shit, you can correct us and tell us we don't know what we're saying, whatever. That's perfectly open. We're trying to make it as interactive as possible. So that's the one thing I wanted to get out of the way.
Yes. I have no idea what to expect of this, is all I'm going to say about this.
Kai and I tested it. The first episode we did that way, just the other day here in the office, to figure out how it works. And it's remarkably simple. It's better than the other version of how we've been recording stuff. And I'm hoping that at least 5 people sign on for the first one and ask a question or two.
And I just how much is my head in this shot? Do I need to clean my apartment? What kind of thing?
It's however you want that to look. I mean, you can close your camera down, and it'll just, what it does is it rotates through the screens of who's talking. So if I'm talking, it'll show me whatever's on my screen, which would be if I had my video on, just myself sitting there like a normal Skype conversation. If you have that off, it'll just show a black screen, and then when you talk, it switches to you. It does it based on who's speaking.
So we should make an effort to speak over each other as much as possible to really confuse the situation.
Absolutely. It'll give people seizures.
Seems like a great idea. You guys are real marketing geniuses.
My whole idea was that has to be a way in which we can make things more interactive, especially not just for this. This is looking ahead. This is one part of it, but also for our authors that can't go to events, and the way that we're doing stuff to try and find new ways of connecting authors and audiences and that are more engaging in some way. So this is kind of the test run on that, more or less. Also, it's easy.
It is easy. Just hope that we deliver on the more interesting part.
Yeah. I mean, those ones have been pretty good. I mean, we did sell 300 copies of Death in Spring in 2 months because of the podcast. So there's some group of people are interested in it.
Well, this is a good book. I've been a fan from it since the beginning, so hopefully we'll sell some more copies.
We've cited on several occasions that this is Tom Roberge's favorite Open Letter book.
I know. We've been selling. We've sold a few copies of that, but also Bardo, Not Bardo.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's an easy sell.
That might be my favorite Open Letter book. I'm a very basic Open Letter customer apparently, but I really love that book.
That's a great book. That's super fun. So how do we want to get into this? I mean, we kind of came up with this, the idea of doing this podcast together when the National Book Award in Translation was announced last week. And there's sort of like, I guess, Alex, you should talk about this. Like, what, as a reporter and writer, like, what is your view on, like, when something like that happens, what is book media's response? What is there there?
Well, I mean, I think my response is to try to find something interesting to say about it. And at least initially, I think I said some interesting things to you when we talked about it on the phone. But getting that into print was a little bit more difficult. I mean, I think part of that is because, like, my thesis about this is pretty big, and this is a really small part of it, which is that I think that we're in this, at least big publishing is in this, like, really gestural era, in which, like, new awards and new pushes and new celebrity imprints are sort of cooked up constantly, basically to, like, cover for the fact that literary fiction is in a mass crisis right now. And, like, you know, adult trade fiction is, like, dropped off by something like 20% in the last 10 years, maybe more than that. And the only way to cover for it is to just, like, push this shit, right? That being said, like, if you look back at what the old National Book Awards were, you know, in like 1980, there were something like 34 prizes, including one for general reference, which was won by a catalog of daytime television. I shit you not. And then, you know, the categories were like, they just split up nonfiction into a million things, like biography and history, and translation is good. You know, it's, like, I think it sort of fits in with the National Book Awards, this, like, larger kind of identity push right now, which is to highlight the sort of best aspects of large publishing and, you know, things that have a kind of humanitarian bent. And I think that there are a lot of kind of little things that we can nitpick with, and I'm sure that we're about to do that. But overall, you know, it's going to be a prize, right? Like, looking at the past winners, it's a lot of, there are a few, you know, the first winner was Julio Cortázar's Hopscotch. That's a great book.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like, classic shit, Kierkegaard, the Aeneid, the translation of the Aeneid one, which I think is funny.
Wow.
You know, The Flowers of Evil. But then, you know, there's also Calvino and other stuff. And I think that what it'll be, right, is a mix of, it's going to be a mix of pushing new translations of old things, which, you know, the Odyssey was a huge hit, so that was already going to happen anyways.
Right.
But publishers are going to be incentivized to do that, and I think that that's probably good. And then, you know, international fiction that, like, pops with larger publishers is weirdly, like, more in line with past National Book Awards things than a lot of fiction being published in English right now. So you can still make kind of grand claims. But I think that, you know, you look at this prize, right, and there's just no way that it wouldn't be won by, like, Knausgaard and Ferrante, like, 4 out of the last 7 years. And, you know, is that a good thing? I'm not sure. But I think ultimately, right, like, just by the process of elimination, a lot of smaller press books are going to get nominated. I think the funniest, like, possibility is that some Amazon Crossing books are going to get nominated, which means that this, like, big publishing subsidized award is going to, like, raise Amazon Publishing's profile. But what are you going to do? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I just wanted to chime in about the gestural sort of thing. I think I was just bitching about something on Twitter this morning about something that was in PW where Penguin was announcing a young adult diverse imprint.
Yep.
And look, and I know I'm a skeptical, cynical person to begin with, but my first instinct is, like, because I have sat in these meetings and been, you know, I've talked to agents and editors, you know, for years and years, like, my instinct is that, and I don't think anyone's going to do this blatantly in this day and age, but that this imprint is now going to become the sort of thing where it's like, oh, there's something coming in where it's quote unquote diverse, and we don't know if we quite have room on our list for it, just give it to the diverse imprint. And so it just encourages a sort of segregation to this sort of writing, and so that all the authors as a whole, they become segregated, which is frustrating because that isn't a way to solve the problem of not publishing enough diversity. It should be that you just publish more diversely without having a special imprint where they sort of get, for lack of a better term, ghettoized, and that's why I've never really liked the idea of like calling attention to translation as translation as like a marketing ploy. Like, if it's a good book, it's a good book. Like, what Chad does or what other small presses do is important, and it sort of streamlines a process of publishing, and that does need to happen because you can't publish everything, right? But in the marketing terms, you are when you're trying to sell somebody a book, you don't immediately say, "Hey, this is a translation." That's not code for anything. It doesn't mean anything about whether or not a book is good or whether or not someone's going to like it, or at least it shouldn't, in my opinion. When I hand somebody a book here in the store, I don't say, "Hey, this is a translation," and like that's the end of my sentence. Like I need to talk about what the book is. Anyway, all of this is a way of saying, like, I feel like apart from there being like these grand gestures to make people feel that literary fiction still matters, I feel like there's a lot of like white guilt about feeling bad about publishing that has happened over the last 30 years. And trying to make amends for that. And one of the ways I think they're trying to make amends for it is with translations and with these diverse imprints. I think they sort of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the I don't think that this is like being consciously done, but I think that one of the great successes of the National Book Awards over the past 4 or 5 years is it's really become, there's always like, it's really funny because like it's book publishing, so comparing it to the Oscars is stupid, but like the Oscars-y thing about the National Book Awards is that it really has become about presenting the best possible image of book publishing like to the world, And I generally think that that's pretty good, and that I think it ultimately like pushes these like corporate publishers closer to where they should go. But the problem with these imprints, as you were saying, is also that like if publishing remains a 90% white industry, then it's always going to have a diverse books problem, right? And like an imprint is definitely a way to start pushing it in the right direction. But I mean, how far that can actually go without hiring people who didn't come through the Columbia Publishing course or Yale is, a big problem, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You're going back a little bit to what you're saying, Tom, too, like of marketing books nowadays as translations isn't important. But I think there was a moment like 10, 13 years ago when like Barnes & Noble would absolutely refuse to carry any translated book, there was something to get behind that had to change that a little bit. And now that it's changed, you have to adapt your marketing strategies and do things differently. And not everyone has done that. But there was a moment where like it wasn't like a pride in that, or that wasn't the selling point, but it was at least like a, come on, like you can carry a book from France and you're not going to die. Like your store's not going to go out of business. And there was a little bit of like pride in doing translation that made that a little bit more possible, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess one of the questions, right, is like, with this is how much faith do you have that open letter books are going to get nominated for this award,
well,
Chad?
Zero, for a shitload of reasons. But hold on with that. But I think like when they announced this too, like I'd sort of known that they were going to do this because they talked about it before and mentioned that they had interest in doing it and so on and so forth. And I think it's cool that they have it. I think there's like going to be a media coverage problem related to it for anything else that was happening in translation. Like the New York Times article, like the issues I have with the prize itself are minor and very, very specific, and I'll explain those in a minute. But like the bigger problem was the narrative that developed around this immediately with like the New York Times article, where it was essentially more or less claiming like they had had this prize back in the day, right? And so this is like the new version of it, but this was like the prize, the only prize in existence for translation was a National Book Award, and like it's kind of like the Man Book International, but now we've got this, and isn't this amazing? And like, and especially on that narrative is stupid. And I think damaging. And it's part of like, I think the larger media problem will be with this is that it becomes the easy and lazy go-to of like, oh, we should have some like international book focus at some point in time. National Book Award in translation, their international stuff is taken care of. That's covered by that. that's good enough. And I have no offense to you, but I have little belief in like the book media coverage that it's less than lazy. Like it never seems like we're really getting into anything or like analyzing anything or doing any real research. I mean, everything's more or less like a press release with like some bit of journalistic flavor added to it. That's damning. I shouldn't be saying any of these things. I'll stop right there for a second. But the problem that I have with the reason I don't think open letter books will be on there is because I don't think we're going to pay to enter them. Like the cost of entering them is got a high. It depends on what they do on March 7th, I suppose. But if it follows all their other things, there's an entry fee of $135 per book, which is seemingly minimal, right? Like it's not that bad. Like it could be a lot worse. But if you're doing 10 books and you entered all of them, that's like, almost $1,500. And that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
But then there's the part where if you do submit it, you have to agree that if you are a finalist, you have to pay for your author to attend the finalist ceremony, be there in person. And I assume in this case it'd be the author and the translator, you'd hope, since they're both receiving the award. And pay for the stickers, pay for an additional marketing and publicity fee directly to the National Book Foundation, which is $3,000 for larger publishers. It's only $1,000, I think, or $850 or something like that for smaller publishers. But it adds up pretty quickly to where, like, if you had a finalist, you'd probably spend an additional $4,000 just on that event alone, depending on how much it costs to get tickets to the National Book Award fundraising gala announcement. I don't know how much that is, but I'm guessing that that's like an amount of money, like a significant amount of money if that's their gala. So like for that reason alone, we're not going to submit all of the books because there's some of them that I don't think that they would win. And if they were finalists even, it would be an astronomical sum of money to not sell any books. Because I don't think the finalists for the National Book Award in translation are going to sell 100 copies.
Yeah. I mean, I've written about this with the Man Booker before, but like the effect of this is it ends up like tilting the playing field dramatically towards big publishers. You could argue it already was that way, but like, an award like this should theoretically be a boon for small publishers, right? Because that's where most translation happens, as your research has shown, aside from Amazon. Yeah, and but what happens, right, is that small publishers run into this dilemma, right? Whereas big publishers don't have to worry about it because they already spend that money too at the National Book Awards for the most part, or
right.
it's a rounding error, which is also funny because they should also raise the pay for most of their junior staff. But yeah, I mean I think that's like one of the issues, right? Is that I think all of this weirdly like leads me to believe that there's a situation in which like Amazon Crossing could theoretically have like a third of the submitted books or something, like,
that would be
which
kind
would
of
be
amazing.
Hilarious. Yeah, because they don't care about $135.
No,
and it's going to dramatically help publishers, deep-pocketed publishers. So, I mean, maybe they'll set up a grant for you, Chad.
Yeah.
The Open Letters Memorial Grant.
But wouldn't that, I'll just die of a high blood pressure attack. But I mean, if they were to waive certain of those fees, that would make a big difference. But I don't know why, as a business model, you would do that for this award and not for the others. Because I mean, and this sort of goes back, and these things all dive together in my mind. But when they announced that they were doing the long list, Morgan Entrekin's like, we're doing this and we're allowing like booksellers onto the committee so that we don't end up with like these crazy university press short story collections that we don't want on these lists anyways. Like this is for like big presses alone, was basically the gist of his statement. And I know that they've walked back from that a lot, obviously, because it's not a good look. But like you wouldn't want to change that. Like you want the fiction and the nonfiction categories to be generating a lot of money for your organization, which is doing good to help people find out about books, and they have literacy projects and the Innovations in Reading Prize and all that kind of stuff, which I really want to win the Innovations in Reading Prize. So if anyone's listening, submit us for that because I want that bad, especially for the 2-month review. But anyways, but like that, you wouldn't want to change that. So if you made translation an exception, that's weird, like business wise, I think, because then you're sort of saying like, well, in this case, Yeah, the small presses deserve a break, but when it comes to poetry, they don't.
Wait, do they not? Penn gives you small presses. They waive the entry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do they not? Does the National Book Awards not do that for the existing prizes?
Not according to their
No.
website.
Yeah, and the rules for the translation prize are the same.
Well, they should be, I mean, realistically. If they want to be fair across the board, sorry. But they should waive it for, I forget what the standards were, under $250,000 or something like that in sales?
I think it's even higher than that, to be honest. For the Penn one, yeah.
Yeah. 400? I honestly don't remember. But
It's something we never pay for it. You always have to ask for to be granted the exemption, and they always give it to you right away if you're a small press.
right.
So it's never,
I think
never an issue.
Yeah, I think it's possible that they will run into an issue with this, just given the makeup of what is published in translation. I mean, I like to think that this will push larger presses to do more stuff in translation, but I don't think it's enough of an incentive.
Oh yeah, I can't
frankly.
imagine.
You kidding me? It's not going to get them to do anything. They don't. It's not how they function. They don't care about that. All it's going to do is make them want, the same way they do now, they're going to want that one prize-winning author on their list and put everything behind that one book. They don't want to, like, a stable of potential winners. They just want the one that they think is going to win.
And if they don't have a lot of competition, they've got better odds of winning this competition than they do any other National Book Award or Pulitzer Prize award, because there isn't much there. They say there's 600 books, which my research from this year is alarming in the decrease in the number of translations being new translations. And I don't know what they're going to include. Like you mentioned, like the retranslation of Beowulf. Like I'm assuming too that the National Book Award will want to popularize that, and we're not tracking that. So there's possible other things. But for new books that are coming out that have never appeared, that number is down significantly in 2018 compared to past years, especially 2016 and 2017. So like if there's even 600 books, doesn't look like that will happen this year. But if there's 600, it's approximately like 85 of those are from the big presses that would have no problem paying fees or doing any of this kind of stuff, and will be the ones that are most likely to be rewarded by this prize. That's a pretty good odds. 1 in 85 is crazy. I mean, if you add on the Amazon books, it's 145 titles, say.
Yeah, I mean, like, why wouldn't you be submitting like crazy for this award? And I mean, and targeting it in acquisition, sort of, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No. Yeah, I can't even. It's funny too that they don't include poetry. It's just fiction and nonfiction.
The nonfiction award is going to be insane because like 30 titles are going to get submitted in that.
They're both in the same category. It's just translation for translation, but it includes any fiction and any nonfiction.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's insane. I mean, I guess including poetry in that as well would make it.
Yeah, no poetry. Poetry's out.
Yeah. That's for the best.
Poor poets.
I'm kidding. I mean, yeah, I think that what it does, right, is it it makes it highly likely, right, that a big marquee translation, of which there are only, there are less than a handful every year, right? I think it becomes very easy to concoct a predictable version of this prize where it's essentially like the Academy Award for foreign film, right, where the same kind of serious, movie that is set between, say, 1933 and 1950 wins like every year. In this case, like the number of new Beowulf translations or whatever, like just in terms of achievement, right, they seem like they will have an upper hand as well, which is what I hope doesn't happen. I think one of the good things about this, right, is that a lot is going to depend on who the jury is, right, maybe more than in any of the other prizes, to actually shape what the fuck it looks like. Yep. Because there are some real boring ways that this can look. And I think what'll end up happening, right, is that it'll probably, the National Book Award for Fiction is, I think, been having to deal with the fact that like literary fiction is in this huge nosedive right now. But it's like inadvertently made it kind of more interesting than it had been a decade ago, although I still don't find it to be that interesting.
I have two questions. One, which is, do we know who the judges are yet?
No, they're announcing them on March 7th.
Okay. It's usually writers, right? Or
Writers and then one bookseller.
Okay. I expect to get a phone call any day then.
Dude, you're on this podcast. There's no way you're getting called.
But, so shouldn't they do translators?
They are. Lisa and I have talked not publicly, but like privately talked about their award, and she said, of course, they're going to include a translator.
Okay.
Which I
Who
don't
else
know
would
if
be included?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I guess they can include critics now because they branched out from what their original guidelines were of who could be a judge. But I don't know. I think for the translator thing, it seems like on the one hand, that seems obvious. Like there'd be a translator, and of course they're probably planning on that. But on the other hand, wouldn't it be kind of more interesting to see if like it were just American authors who maybe don't read anything outside of this, rather than someone who might be really focused on like the achievement of the craft. Like there is the National Translation Award that's from Alta that is based in the idea that they check the original against the finished one, and they're looking at who's the best like translator translation. And they have only translators judge that, and it has like kind of that pitch. And in some ways, like the National Book Award could be kind of fun if it is just like, you know, random authors, like whatever, some authors who maybe have not read a book from like Croatia in their lives. I don't know why I assume this, but that would be kind of interesting. I think maybe, or could.
I agree. I think that could. No offense to translators, but I do think it would be better served if they were just critics and readers, you know, authors, full stop, who can just appreciate the book on those like reader level merits and not the art of translation sort of merits.
Totally. Also, I'll give you my pick for the winner right now.
Wait, so when is the first one is being announced?
November.
So it's books published calendar year 2018?
It says, under December, all books must be published by U.S. publishers located in the United States between December 1st, 2017 and November 30th, 2018. So no, it's going forward.
Right, but it's basically a month on either end of 2018. So
yeah, my winner is not going to count. My winner is wrong.
Oh, okay. I think it's going to be Guard.
That comes out in November, right?
He just put one out. We just got it in the store.
Wait, which one are you talking about?
Winter.
Oh, yeah, those ones. Yeah, is this nonfiction inclusion just to be able to include those and like that Ferrante book of nonfiction? I was going to say, if it was last year's books, the winner would be the Margaret Joel Costa's like updated, revised, new translation of the Pessoa.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that doesn't qualify.
Doesn't qualify, but that would be like the sort of thing that you can assume. Like Edie Grossman would have won for Don Quixote.
Absolutely.
Paviran Volikansky would have won for War and Peace.
Right.
Yes.
If those all win, those are all great books. Those are all great translations. I'm bored.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like
No,
there's nothing to say about that at all. And I mean, the most interesting thing, I think they're always going to screw over some, you know, rube small publisher comes into New York with cardboard suitcases, hoping to win the prize, and they're never going to win.
No.
It'll be to pay their
$80,000. They're gonna invest their entire marketing budget for the year into one trip to New York just to fail. Yeah, I was trying to imagine when I was writing a post about this, like being at that awards ceremony, and like I would not be okay there. Like I don't think I would fit in. I would look wrong. I would not have anyone to talk to. It would be very, very awkward.
I go every year.
What is it like?
It's weird. Yeah.
It's not
just like it's good
for what it is.
Yeah, it's like going to BEA or something where, you know, even like sort of covering publishing, right? Like you get a kind of warped idea. Right? I mean, I'm on your fucking podcast, right? Like, and you know, it's nice I always like going to BEA and the National Book Awards because you're suddenly like, oh shit, like this is what is really happening, right? And I'm such an idiot when I talk to people about, you know, some literary fiction book that sold, you know, 1,600 copies or whatever.
Right.
Because like this whole bigger game is happening, and it's just a bunch of bald people in suits, and then the after party, all of the young people from publishing come, and that's more fun. Not that much more fun, but.
So I wanted to ask Chad, and just to give you an opportunity to vent here, and maybe Alex, you have a take on this because you work on the coverage side of what Chad does. Is how do you? To me, the rollout of this thing felt like we were supposed to pat the National Book Awards on the back for having invented caring about translated literature, much the way we as booksellers are supposed to thank Ann Patchett for inventing bookstores. It's just very frustrating to watch these phenomena.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you just asking for just a general reaction?
Yeah.
I'll let Chad go first. Yeah.
Oh, I wrote 2 very, very, very long posts last weekend with a lot of whiskey involved. And one of them had to do with BookMarks and LitHub, and that was just a goddamn joy to write. You can talk about that in a minute. And the other one about the National Book Award was part of a larger set of jokes, but that was really the only way for me to emotionally work through that bit of it, because I find it incredibly frustrating that that is the these things can all dovetail into that narrative too of they've created the idea of translation. This is the word for translation. Translation is being done by Grove and HarperCollins and Riverhead with these big wondrous books, and this is all the problem. There is no problem. There is nothing to see here. Everything's fine. We don't need other voices from other places, and the media can make that case very quickly, or they'll just paper over everything, and that was irritating. That the New York Times article had me frothing for a minute, because it's just we've spent so many years doing something for this and never get that kind of coverage because we don't have the money or the connections, and it's just another instance though I think of the media and books, the value rarely has to do with the quality of the thing being done, and is 100% about the connections and the reputation that precedes you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that when you roll something out like this, that's how you roll it out, right? They would not be doing their job as a large book award / foundation, as the preeminent literary prize in America, having displaced the Pulitzer some years ago. If they didn't do a rollout like this, and I think that the problem. I mean, I love Alex Alter's reporting. I think she's a really great reporter. I think that the issue right now is just that she's the only book reporter. So that means that she's the only game in town, right? So when you have a news release, then you go to the Times, and the Times is the best place for it. It's also the only place for it. And I think that, that inevitably leads to a kind of weird dispersion of coverage where it just there's the one thing that everybody goes to, and then eventually it'll disseminate to a bunch of blogs that are read by maybe 150 people, but there's not really a middle ground at all. And that, that Times report to me is that's your job, right? You get a scoop, you have to do that, right? You're doing your service to the source in a way. I think mentioning Amazon Crossing in there was a little weird.
Tilted axis.
Yeah. But I think, generally, right, you're also gonna hone in on presses that Times readers could conceivably have heard of. Now, why New Directions wasn't included and Amazon Crossing was, as I think Tom pointed out on Twitter, is remains a mystery to me. But I think that the issue, right, to me was not with that Times report. It's just that there is not really a book publishing media that exists in any meaningful form anymore. It just doesn't exist. Nobody's reporting on it. And that's a problem for a lot of reasons. I think my general sense is that I don't know how adversarial any responsible reporter should be with the announcement of a new major prize for translation.
Yeah.
But I think where it does, this dynamic does come into focus, right, is just that the publishing industry is 90% white and is old fashioned in a whole lot of ways. And it's also going through these like sea changes that I think are emblematic of like, and in some ways ahead of the curve for like what's happening in the larger American society, just because Amazon happened to target them first. And, you know, we just don't have anybody who is really paying attention. And like, you know, Alex is one of the few people who can, I think, do that responsibly.
Let me point out one bit of absurdity within that article, within her article. So it mentions Amazon Crossing, right? And it's a link in the online version. It links to your article, Alex, called "How Amazon Quietly Became America's Biggest Publisher of Translated Literature," which is based in my research.
Yes. This is, I mean, so you did get mentioned, Chad.
Yeah, I know. It's such like a weird, fucked up circle. The tilted axis one I don't get, because I'm assuming they're not going to be eligible for this prize.
So they're clearly not eligible.
Yeah. 100% not eligible.
No, I checked, like, before I made my comment on Twitter, I was like, wait, can I get their books? And I looked up, and I cannot get their books.
Yep.
Like, they're not even distributed in the U.S., so they have to be published by somebody else in the U.S. if that's going to happen. So, yeah, it's absurd. Like, no one has heard of fucking tilted axis.
I mean, I actually have. You keep saying it. I have no idea what it is.
It's like it could be Googling anything. Oh yeah. Man. So you think it's problematic though? I mean, yeah, I guess it's just that like they're obviously going to have to do what they do. The National Book Foundation is not at fault for any of this. Like they're rolling it out the way they have to. And like the coverage that we saw was like that interview with Lisa, which is very like softball-y sort of questions, which is sort of what book coverage is resulted into, is a bigger problem. And what it could be differently, it doesn't. I don't know that it has to be like aggressively questioning the underpinnings of the award or a press release. Like it doesn't. There has to be some sort of middle ground, right? Like some sort of like it feels almost like none of this stuff matters. Because of the fact that it doesn't have any sort of commentary around it that is of note.
Well, yeah, I mean, my thing is hating the player, or sorry, hating the game and not the player. Like, and I think that, you know, the problem with this is that it just immediately there's the only thing left is you know, rah cheerleading bullshit for the most part, and like there are exceptions to that, like people who do real reporting, but those are pretty few and far between, or they happen in, you know, newsletters that cost a lot of money. So yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say actually, is that a lot of the what we have left in what qualifies as a sort of publishing news cycle is all filtered through Publishers Weekly, right? And everything sort of goes from there. But all they're doing is sort of aggregating stuff, what they hear in the news elsewhere. You know, they're reprinting articles from other people, including Shelf Awareness and things like that. Like I get these both newsletters every day, like 3 hours apart. It's the same fucking thing, just printed. And all of it is just the most bullet item news. Bookstore opening, bookstore for sale, bookstore closing. There's no broader discussion about why a particular bookstore is going out of business, what market forces might have happened, what irresponsible, you know, business management might have made it happen. It's just like, let's mourn the loss of another bookstore, but then one paragraph later, we're going to celebrate another one opening in another city in another state without any context of how that one managed to get open or anything. And then they just go on to report job news from the publishing world that no one cares about. Yeah. And, oh, hey, here's a new book for teenagers. Let's celebrate that. And that's it.
The two biggest narratives of the last 4 or 5 years, right, are both total bullshit, right? One is that ebook sales have plateaued and print sales are rising. Total bullshit. The other is that bookstores are on the rebound, right? And that's like sort of true, but ultimately, if you put it in the context of what's happened over the last 20 years, it would make you want to blow your brains out, right? Because you're looking at still like a 60% decrease in bookstores and like probably a 500% decrease in shelf space, right?
That's
and yeah, like, and shelf space is what actually matters. And like a bunch of people who are smarter than me hit upon that a long time ago. And like with ebook stuff, right? Like what's happening is very complicated and involves Amazon gobbling up, like mostly selling a bunch of crap, right? But instead, we've like basically what exists in publishing media has like largely hit upon these two narratives, and they make people feel good about the state of the industry. And like the state of the industry right now is terrible, and everybody should be panicking. And yet, like, I think that's partly an effect of having like mostly a pretty complacent press that's just, basically part of a like loop in which, they have a dependent relationship on publishers who give them money and keep them in business. And then they very happily just pass along information from book publishers. And like, I'm remarkably pessimistic about things that are happening, but I don't see, now I sound like some fucking jacked up like guy in the 60s or whatever, but I don't see the real news, what's happening on the streets of Midtown Manhattan. I don't see that in most of the trade press.
Very true. Man, I don't even have a good response to that.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to rant.
More power. That's what this is for.
Yeah, I know.
I guess not far away from there is like that you have the trade covers the trade papers is what I was going to say, but they're not papers. Trade magazines, trade newsletters covering everything, the trade press. And then there's like on the other side, then essentially you just have LitHub.
Are we recording right now?
We are recording right now.
Okay.
So you're not going to say anything mean about LitHub?
No, I wasn't going to say anything anyways, because I look, I don't know if it won't make me, I guess I consider us to already be friends, but I like LitHub. I think it's totally fine. But my issue is like, we shouldn't be looking to, that site has a purpose, and I think it serves it well, right? But if you're looking at it to serve other purposes, then that's a problem, right? But it's because we have this dearth in coverage in this industry that I think a lot of people look to a site like that to like fill that vacuum, But like, they exist as a conduit between publishers and readers, and like, they mostly publish stuff that's, I think, pretty good.
What is its purpose, Jack?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. What is it serving?
I mean, look, what purpose is it? I mean, they publish stuff, right? They publish literary things. I don't think it's meant to be a portrait of the industry. I think, it's a place for writing of a certain caliber. And that's what it does. I don't know how now I'm in a position where I'm like, I don't know why I'm defending this to you two. It stands on its own two legs.
I would hesitate to say that, but
yeah.
I'm trying to find if they have an About Us page on here, but I don't see one.
My problem with them is they sort of I think they have an inflated sense of their importance in the world, in that I don't think anyone outside of the publishing industry actually goes to the website. And they would have you believe otherwise.
Let me read you their About Us, because you guys are going to find this pretty interesting. Literary Hub is an organizing principle in the service of literary culture, a single, trusted, daily source for all the news, ideas, and richness of contemporary literary life. There is more great literary content online than ever before, but it is scattered, easily lost. With the help of its editorial partners, LitHub is a site readers can rely on for smart, engaged, entertaining writing about all things books. Each day, alongside original content and exclusive excerpts, Literary Hub is proud to showcase an editorial feature from one of its many partners from across the literary spectrum, publishers big and small, journals, bookstores, and nonprofits.
I mean, that's what you're supposed to write some garbage ass bullshit on your About Us, right? Everything's like that.
Yeah, okay, know. so it's yeah. I'm 100% indifferent on their original content. I'd like more of our excerpts to exist on there. And BookMarks, I'm adamantly opposed to. I could specifically talk about that all day, because it is the most self-centered, like horrible for the book culture thing that's come into existence recently.
I mean, I wrote about that like a year and a half ago, and I think my take, as is my take, everything is that like it was the thing that's misguided about it is like not necessarily a flaw. It's that there's just not Rotten Tomatoes works because movies are reviewed like 40 to 100 times, so you get a reasonable, over the course of that, it's a real sample size, right? Whereas like most of the books on BookMarks have been reviewed less than 10 times.
Yep.
And then also having only 3 ratings right now, which are, they used to do literal grades.
Yep.
But like that was ridiculous, as I read at the time. And now they just do rave, pan, and mixed, I think, which is pretty funny.
Rave, positive, and mixed, and pan. There's 4.
And pan,
4.
yeah. But I think that. Sorry.
I have to go, unfortunately. Got to go back to work.
Oh.
But it's a pleasure talking to you both. Alex, it's been a while. Chad, you can rant on my behalf.
Now I'm just on my own here. Now I'm going to be the really bad person. Like I don't even have someone saying that they agree. Just say at least that you believe that BookMarks is garbage.
Oh, it's total garbage. Come on.
Yeah.
I like both of you because I always feel like I'm less cynical after I talk to you,
All right.
Talk to you later, man.
It's nice to talk to you. See ya.
We could keep this going. So I think that what you're pointing out, that they don't have many places to get reviewed and they have the 4 things, is part of the structural problem with it. Now, the secondary problem to that, and this is the LitHub problem, this is the part that I have with the whole site construction, is that they have decided which places to use, and those places are already self-selected to be essentially the outlet for the biggest commercial book publishers. They have other choices. There could be a lot more reviews of these books, but they've chosen to exclude places like Words Without Borders, World Literature Today, Quarterly Conversation, our website. Anything that I've ever written would never be on here, can't be on here, because they've chosen to only highlight the places that are highlighting the books that they want to highlight on here, so they can highlight themselves as the center of this highlighting of these big, massive books. And that's fucked up. And if they're going to continue tilting and pushing on that lever, so that all of the traffic going into LitHub, all of the books that they're featuring are only these books, then that's a problem. If they're talking themselves as representing the world of book culture in all of its diversity through all of their wonderful partners, then fucking do it. Don't put yourself into this goddamn black hole of featuring the same 7 books endlessly. That's what pisses me off. Done.
I just think that like my not to be all galaxy brain about it, but like it's a problem. Like this is a problem with book culture writ large, right? I think in general, like LitHub does a better than adequate job of a slightly broader but familiar take. It's a general interest publication aimed at readers, right? Like, I think it's read fairly widely, and I think it does that job fine, right? But this is a problem with like what's become the kind of conventional like literary culture, is just that it is just 7 books laundered over and over again. I mean, I think that they are a little bit like their scope is wider than most other what I would consider to be sort of general interest publications. But I mean, there just isn't a place that right now that actually does reflect the wider literary culture and all of its glory or whatever. So, like and I think that they have expanded what existed before. I think in general, like their features are mostly really good. I don't care for the lists either. But I think, like, I guess my issue with like whining about it specifically, I am going to say whining, Chad. I know you well enough now. I could say that.
But what about Circa Jessica Parker's video?
Yeah, she went to Winter. Tell me about Winter Institute.
It was fine.
Chad.
We didn't sponsor it because we don't have any money. So we're sort of like on the outside without even a name tag, just sitting there, watching people enjoy themselves. So that was cool. No, it was, and so I did go. I went there, but we weren't a $6,000 sponsor. We don't have that. So like this is another one of those your book industry disparities, is that then you're like pretty much outside of a lot of things. So we bought drinks, had a party that was like pretty modestly attended. Went to other people's parties. Went to, I think, the LitHub party, in fact. which was weird. It was in like some Airbnb, and talked to a lot of booksellers and like tried to like, you know, meet new people. I didn't really meet that many new booksellers. I met a few, but not many. I met different people from bookstores I'm already familiar with, which is I think is a plus. And then a lot of the people that are already fans of ours, we up their like did more with them, so maybe that helps us, right? So maybe it's good to go. I'd like to go as a sponsor, as a partial sponsor next year. I'm trying to try and make that happen. But otherwise, it was okay. And Sarah Jessica Parker was there at like a breakfast. I didn't see her though.
Yeah.
I did see Michael. What's the guy's name that played Christopher Moltisanti in The Sopranos?
It's he was Spider in Goodfellas.
Oh.
Right?
Really?
Am I making this up?
No. I think that's a different guy. Christopher
No,
Moltisanti is
it's Michael,
young guy, right?
Michael Imperioli.
Yeah, that guy.
He was Spider
yes.
in Goodfellas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
And he's at Winter Institute, or does he just live in Memphis?
No, he was at Winter Institute.
No, that's crazy. Just one quick digression. I was looking to send you a good LitHub features essay, and I just passed one that called Ulysses: Good or Bad. So maybe I have to revise my previous statement.
You might want to dig deep. See, that's the thing that like okay.
He's gonna be like, yeah, Ulysses. That's a D- book. It's fucking, it's throwing pennies at the Titanic. like history has rendered its verdict. It's good. It fucking changed literature. Anyways, I mean, so the Sarah Jessica Parker thing interests me for a few reasons. One is that I'm a Carrie. Two, her video at Winter Institute is great, and I've found it endlessly fascinating watching this extraordinarily famous person try to navigate a room full of books. But then three,
find where this is.
It's on her Instagram.
I'm on her Instagram, but you'll send it to me.
I'll send it to you. But then three, I think, is so Winter Institute now has, for the last several years, embodied, I think, a pretty important role in the publishing ecosystem, because BEA is just a total fucking wash now, and there's no reason for anybody to go for any reason, right. Pretty much. And AWP is okay, but it's not really a trade conference, and it's more for writers, right? So then Winter Institute exists to fulfill this, I think, the most important role, and an especially important role right when Amazon is super dominant, and if you want books to succeed, you really need to forge relationships with booksellers at a micro level, and also it's just good for everybody. And yet it's just this slow drift that endlessly fascinates me in publishing, where everything just becomes corporatized so quickly now, and now Winter Institute just slowly but surely is just kind of the sort of big book ecosystem. It's just is a weird virus or whatever, and it hooks in. And I may be I've never been to Winter Institute. I just talk to people who go, but the sense that I've gotten is that's become truer, and obviously sending SJP down is great, but I think it also is a funny sign of how these things just get kind of inevitably, I mean, corrupted feels too strong, but they become changed.
Yeah, what it really feels like is Book Expo from 2000.
Yeah.
It's
back when it was cool.
Back when everyone was there, everyone went to it, and so there were lots and lots of people that you would encounter, and there's an excitement to it. There's a sort of visceral enjoyment, and Winter Institute's trying to restrict the numbers so that it doesn't become Book Expo, where it becomes too big and then becomes empty immediately because it just flares out. So they only would allow 500 booksellers for a long period of time. And to be a publisher, you have to pay, fortune, and you can only have one book on display there, one author, and one book in their gallery room, which I found her. So I think she's in the gallery room here. SJP and her video.
Yes.
I didn't go to the gallery room because I didn't have a badge, so I assume that's what this is.
Yeah,
but,
it is in the gallery room, and it's
Yeah. So they restricted all of it to make sure that it retained a bit of that like intimacy. It now had like almost 700 booksellers because they loosened up that part of it, and there's a ton of publishers there, like a ton. Like before, I remember at one point wanting to try and get involved, and they're like, no, we only accept X number of publishing people, and that's already filled up. And I don't know if they still do that. But I think they do. I think they have some sort of limit, so they're growing it slowly, but. My sense, like, it's the best place, it's the best option for every part of this. It's the best option for interacting with booksellers. No reviewers are there, which is maybe a downside. Or there are some, because, like, Greg Cowles is there, Pamela Paul is there, but for, like, a day or whatever. But it feels also like in, like, 3 years, this could easily just go over the edge. And be too big and then not have that value. So like if $6,000, like 4 years ago, $6,000, which we still wouldn't have had, but like would have been really valuable to be a half sponsor when there's only 20 publishers doing that with 500 booksellers. Now there's like 60 publishers doing that, 700 booksellers, $6,000. I think your value is going to start to get eroded pretty quickly. And that's sort of what happened with Book Expo. It became more expensive than the value was, so why bother going? You aren't getting anything out of it.
And now, Winter Institute will never become what Book Expo did, right?
No.
But like, because that is just a total fucking train wreck. But I think I think there's a question now about how much value it has. You know, it was legitimately, or it still is legitimately great for small publishers. But I feel you can feel those forces starting to align, you know, where the sort of bigger publishers start to creep in. And, you know, to be fair, like a lot of the better big publishers have mastered this art, you know, like Riverhead is a master of winning over booksellers and things like that, you know. Mm-hmm. But like, you know, you get other sub Riverhead publishers that just like throw money at problems and like, you know, that recipe, you know, I don't know why I'm like worried about the integrity of Winter Institute, a place I've never been and probably will never go to.
Yeah. I'm not even worried about that. There is that little bit of that aspect to it, because they're like, I mean, like with anything else, and this is back to your Penguin Random House 40% of the industry deal, is that they use like the kind of like crass capitalist business tactics, which they must do to be able to maximize their profit. And one of those is like just sort of locking down shelf space and publisher attention. And that part's like wild. Like the number of people that are like bussed out to like special fancy Penguin Random House dinners out on the outskirts of places so that they can't really leave. And like they're sort of like a captive audience for hours so that they can't go hang out at some dirty indie press party where they might end up putting like 2 indie press books on a shelf and taking up a space for like, you know, whatever new Penguin book is coming out. Like that's a little bit saddening, but like there's nothing you can do. But that's just the way that capitalism works. Sort of like the Lit Hub conversation. Like, yeah, I'm using that as a representative of the larger part of things, and that it bothers me. But it's also just the way the whole internet works. Like that is what, and I don't like that. Because I'm an old man, way older than you are. I've gone through all those things and seen it get just increasingly worse over time, and see no hope for the future of any sort of meritocracy or any sort of breakthrough that I personally or the press can ever have, because we just aren't going to be part of the systems that are set up to explicitly fuck us.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that, Ramp.
Yeah, that's the problem. The people that are involved are always great. The system is fucked.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like super fucked. And I think, you know, but Winter Institute has been one of the good parts of this super fucked system.
Oh yeah, Winter Institute was great. Like that was the best time I've had at one of these at a book conference in years. I mean, even including like AWP, Alta is like a translator one, BEA, whatever. This was by far the best.
Yeah. I mean, Memphis is great, too. One of America's great cities.
Memphis was awful. There was no one there.
Yeah.
And it was weird. and it's sort of like weird to a point that it was like, you could easily convince me that Amazon had kidnapped us. We had been in a basement and we had just memories implanted into our brain. I would buy it without question.
How I learned to love Amazon.
Yeah, we were like in a Black Mirror episode for 90% of the time.